Okay, to begin, question 20. To survive when water is scarce, embryos inside African turquoise killfish eggs blank a dormant state known as diapause. In this state, embryonic development is paused for as long as 2 years, longer than the lifespan of an adult killfish. So we need to determine what goes in the blank space. So it's clearly a verb, right? And the verb needs to be in a certain tense. That's what we're looking at. So to survive when water is scarce, embryos inside African turquoise killfish eggs enter a dormant state, to enter a dormant state, having entered a dormant state, or entering a dormant state. So what do you think is the correct answer here? Anybody? Okay, the right answer is enter. A is the correct answer because it basically it is a simple present tense. Okay, killfish eggs enter a dormant state, and it's plural, right? Because it's eggs. Good. Okay, question 21. Formed in 1967 to foster political and economic stability within the Asia-Pacific region, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations was originally made up of 5 members: Thailand, the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. By the end of the 1990s, the organization blanked its initial membership. So the organization did something. It has to be a verb. The organization by a specific time in the past, the organization A has doubled, B had doubled, C doubles, D will double. Now remember, the sentence is referring to a time in the past, okay, when it doubled its population. So what is the correct tense here? Is it A, B, C, or D? Does anyone have an answer? Okay, because what they're referring to is in the past tense, the right answer is B. By the 1990s, the organization had doubled its initial membership. If you said, as of the present, you would say, as of the present, the organization has doubled, if you're referring to right now. But when you're talking about an event that occurred in the past, the doubling of members, you use had doubled as the past tense. Okay, good. 22, the intense pressure found in the deep ocean can affect the structure of proteins in fish's cells. Turn off your mic. Turn off your microphone. The intense pressure found in the deep ocean can affect the structure of proteins in fish's cells, distorting the protein's shape. The chemical trimethylamine N oxide, TMAO, counters this effect, ensuring that proteins retain their original blank, is found in high concentrations in the cells of the deepest dwelling fish. So we need to find out what goes in the blank space. Ensuring that proteins retain their original, remember, proteins is plural. Their original what? So we know it has to be plural. Configurations, okay? And then we got to figure out what kind of grammar we want, right? So the next sentence starts with TMO, okay? TMO is found in high concentrations in the cells of the deepest dwelling fish. So this right here, A, makes a lot of sense. You finish one thought and you start another. The proteins retain their original configurations, period. TMAO is found in high concentrations in the cells of the deepest dwelling fish. Okay, a comma is wrong and is wrong because really this is a separate sentence. Okay, it's a separate idea. So you don't want to have a run-on sentence. A run-on sentence has too many different ideas in it. So a comma or an and is totally inappropriate. This is wrong because there's no punctuation. It's basically you need punctuation to separate TMO from the end of the previous sentence. So the only right answer here is A. Okay, and that's 22. All right, let's move on. 23. Food and the sensation of taste are central to Monique Truog's novels. In the Book of Salt, for example, the exiled character of Bin connects to his native Saigon through the food he prepares, while in Bitter in the Mouth, the character of Linda blanks a form of synesthesia, whereby the words she hears evoke tastes. So synesthesia is the blending of senses where you can hear colors or you can see sounds. That's what synesthesia means. And people with perfect pitch will actually have a color for each note. They actually will hear a color. So basically, just so you know what synesthesia means. So Linda blanks a form of synesthesia whereby the words she hears, she experienced, she had experienced, she experiences, she will be experiencing. So future, present, simple, past, and past, okay? Now, what's the appropriate tense here? Okay, well, let's look at the whole sentence. In the Book of Salt, the exiled character Bin connects. Look at that. He connects, as present tense, to his native Saigon through the food he prepares, while in Bitter in the Mouth, the character of Linda experiences, present tense. Okay, because it connects with the previous tense. If this is in the present tense, this needs to be in the present tense as well. So the right answer is going to be C, experiences, right there. Okay, question 24. Inventor John Friedman created a prototype of the first flexible straw by inserting a screw into a paper straw and using dental floss, binding the straw tightly around the blank. When the floss and screw were removed, the resulting corrugations in the paper allowed the straw to bend easily over the edge of a glass. So you've all seen flexible straws, right? The top section of the straw has corrugations in it, so you can bend it over, right? And some straws don't have that. Like if you go to McDonald's, they don't have that. Anyway, so we got to figure out what goes in the blank. Binding the straw tightly around, okay, the screws, threads, possessive, possessive, okay? The screws, plural possessive, non-possessive, just plural. Singular possessive, plural. Neither, not possessive, just plural, and possessive. So who owns the threads? The screw. How many screws are there? One. So the right answer has to either be A or C. It's singular possessive. It's the screws, threads. So you got to have an apostrophe before the S, not after it. So you know it's either A or C. Now, is the word threads possessive? What are the threads own? They don't own anything. There's nothing that belongs to the threads. So having a possessive is wrong. So you know the right answer has to be C. The screws, single screws, possessive, threads, multiple threads. Okay? So that's one where you got to sort through who owns what. The screw owns the threads own nothing. They're just plural. And C is the right answer there. Okay, good. 25. In her analysis of Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth, 1905, scholar Candace Wade observes that the novel depicts the upper classes of New York society as, quote, consumed by the appetite of a soulless blank, an apt assessment given that The House of Mirth is set during the Gilded Age, a period marked by rapid industrialization, economic greed, and widening wealth disparities. Sounds like our time, right? Almost sounds like all times. So Wade observed that the novel depicts the upper classes of New York society as, quote, consumed by the appetite of a soulless. Now remember, we need another quotation mark. So materialism is soulless materialism. In other words, just going for luxury. So we know that there has to be a quotation after materialism. So look, you've got it. All four choices have a quote after materialism. Then the real question is, what is the grammar? What is the punctuation here between materialism quotation and the rest of the sentence? Do you put a semicolon and an and? Do you just put an and? Do you put a comma? Or do you put no punctuation at all? This is a pretty tough one. So we know that materialism ends in a quote because the quote is consumed by the appetite of a soulless materialism, close quote. Now, a semicolon separates two sentences that are whole sentences. So if you're an apt assessment, given that that's not going to be a complete sentence. So right away, you know, semicolon is wrong. Okay. Using the word and here is incorrect because what you're doing with an apt assessment is you're reflecting back on the quotation. You're describing the quotation, characterizing the quotation. So the word and doesn't belong in there at all. So these two are clearly wrong. Now, should you just have a quotation and not set it apart from the rest of the sentence? Absolutely not. It would just be a run-on. So the only right answer is C. So the way this reads is, in her analysis of Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth, scholar Candace Wade observes that the novel depicts the upper classes of New York society as, quote, consumed by the appetite of a soulless materialism, close quote, an apt assessment given that The House of Mirth is set during the Gilded Age. Okay, so you want to use the comma here and not not nothing. And the comma always goes before the end of the quotation. So the right answer is C. 25 is C. 26. To humans, it does not appear that the golden orb weaver spider uses camouflage to capture its blank. The brightly colored arachnid seems to wait conspicuously in the center of its large circular web for insects to approach. Researcher Po Peng of the University of Melbourne has explained that the spider's distinctive coloration may in fact be part of its appeal. So the spider, actually, its coloration is attracting insects, and then those insects become prey, and they wind up being captured by the spider. Okay. To humans, it does not appear that the golden orb weave spider uses camouflage to capture its prey. So we know that prey is the right answer, right? So now we have to figure out what's the punctuation. Okay. Do we end with a period? Nope, we don't have that as a choice. Do we put a comma and separate rather by another comma, rather, and then just go on with the rest of the sentence? Do we only have a single comma after rather without double commas? Do we have a comma and then a semicolon? Do we have a semicolon and then use the word rather? Does anyone want to guess on this one? What you think the right answer is? Okay, so basically, semicolon here, it makes no sense because rather is not going to start a new sentence, a whole complete sentence. So semicolon is out. Okay, you need to separate the word rather out. Okay, and you got to do it with commas. You can't have a comma just on one side because then it reads pray rather instead of pray pause rather as an alternative, right? Semicolon after rather makes no sense either. Okay, because remember, semicolons have to separate two complete sentences. And in this case, you're not going to have two complete sentences. So what you really can do here is just separate the word rather by commas. So the right answer is A. So it reads, orb weaver spider uses camouflage to capture its prey. Rather, the brightly colored arachnid seems to wait conspicuously in the center of its large circular web. Okay, so the right answer is A. Okay, 26, 27. In Death Valley National Park's racetrack playa, a flat, dry lake bed, are 162 rocks, dash, some weighing less than a pound, but others almost 700 pounds, dash, that move periodically from place to place, comma, seemingly of their own volition, period. That's a long sentence, right? Racetrack-like trails in the various migration. Okay, so we look at that. Oh, turn off your mic. Turn off your microphone, please. So what do you think the right answer is here? Racetrack-like trails in the playa sediment mark the rock's mysterious migration. Racetrack-like trails in the playa sediment possessive mark the rock's mysterious migration. Racetrack-like trails in the playa's possessive sediment mark the rock's mysterious migration. Now look at this, singular playa, there's only one playa, and the sediment belongs to it. So the apostrophe is in the right place, the playa sediment. Now remember, trails is plural. So this verb mark has to go with a plural, and it does. So the trails in the playas sediment mark, because it's plural, the rocks, there's more than one rock, so this is plural possessive, mysterious migration. So this is the right answer, C, and it really is important that we understand it, okay? We got a singular playa, which is a Spanish word for beach. So we have singular possessive. The sediment belongs to the single playa. But the mark, the verb mark, is referring back to trails, racetrack trails, plural. So it has to be mark, it can't be marks, because it has to be a plural verb. And then the rocks, because the rocks are plural, you want to say the rocks migration. The migration belongs to the rocks, so possessive is correct, but there's multiple rocks. So the apostrophe has to go after the S. So this is plural possessive. So the right answer here is C. And there's a lot going on in that phrase right there. You got to pick out the right answer, and you got to use logic to do it. Okay. 28. In crafting her fantasy fiction, Nigerian-born British author Helen Oyeyemi has drawn inspiration from the classic 19th century fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. Her 2014 novel, Boy, Snow, Bird, for instance, is a complex retelling of the story of Snow White, while her 2019 novel, Blank, offers a delicious twist on the classic tale of Hansel and Gretel. Okay. So we know it has to be the title of a book, right? Her novel, Gingerbread. The question is, what do we do with gingerbread, right? Do we put a dash after it? Do we put a comma after it? Do we put nothing after it? Or do we put a semicolon? So let's see whether or not we can figure this out. For instance, is a complex retelling of the story of Snow White, while her 2019 novel, and now we got to figure out how to punctuate this, right? Her 2014 novel, Boy, Snow, Bird. No punctuation here, right? And the comma is there because of for instance. So the comma is there because it separates out for instance. So essentially, the novel Boy, Snow, Bird has really no punctuation around it. It's just the title, the novel Boy, Snow, Bird. So novel is describing this. So in this case, novel, we should basically just have the word, the title of the novel. This is simply the title of the novel. Ignore that comma because it goes with for instance. So this should simply be the title of the novel. So the right answer here is C, Gingerbread. So White, while her 2019 novel Gingerbread offers a delicious twist on the classic tale of Hansel and Gretel. So this is where you look for parallel structure. You see what they did, what she did with this title, and then you do the same thing with this title. And essentially, there's no punctuation there, separating out the title from the word novel, and you don't want to put any punctuation here either. So C is the correct answer. Okay, 29. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. NASA uses rovers, large remote vehicles with wheels, to explore the surface of Mars. NASA's rovers can't explore regions inaccessible to wheeled vehicles. Rovers are also heavy making them difficult to land on the planet's surface. Microprobes, robotic probes that weigh as little as 50 milligrams, could be deployed virtually anywhere on the surface of Mars. Microprobes have been proposed as an alternative to rovers. So basically, the student wants to explain an advantage of microprobes. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal? What's the advantage of the microprobes? Well, they can go places where the rovers can't go, and they're much lighter than the rovers. So let's look at the possible answers here. Despite being heavy, NASA's rovers can land successfully on the surface of Mars. Well, that doesn't address the advantage of microprobes, so A is wrong. Microprobes, which weigh as little as 50 milligrams, could explore areas of Mars that are inaccessible to NASA's heavy-wheeled rovers. Yeah, that basically tells you what the advantage of the microprobes are over the heavy-wheeled rovers. So B is definitely possible. NASA currently uses its rovers on Mars, but microprobes have been proposed. Yeah, but it doesn't address why there's an advantage to microprobes. So that's wrong. And D, though they are different sizes, both microprobes and rovers can be used to explore the surface of Mars, doesn't explain the advantage. So the only one that really addresses the purpose described here is B. So B has to be the right answer. Okay. Question 30. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. Abdul Razak Gurna was awarded the 2021 Nobel Prize in Literature. Gurna was born in Zanzibar in East Africa and currently lives in the United Kingdom. Many readers have singled out Gurna's 1994 book, Paradise, for praise. Paradise is a historical novel about events that occurred in colonial East Africa. Okay, so these are the notes that you have. The student wants to introduce Paradise to an audience unfamiliar with the novel and its author. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes? So you want to introduce people both to the novel and to the author. Okay, so let's see which one of these is appropriate. Abdul Razak Gurna, who wrote Paradise and later was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, was born in Zanzibar in East Africa and currently lives in the United Kingdom. Okay, so where's the description of Paradise or anything about Paradise? Basically, this is okay, but it doesn't quite get there. Many readers have singled out Abdul Razak Gurna's 1994 book, Paradise, a historical novel about colonial East Africa, for praise. So this one doesn't really address the author. It talks about the book. A much praised historical novel about colonial East Africa. Aha! Now you're telling what the novel is about. In the previous two choices, you're not saying what the novel was about. Here you're giving the title, the date of the novel, and the subject, colonial East Africa. It was written by Abdul Razak Gurna, winner of the 2021 Nobel Prize in Literature. So you're giving relevant information about the author. He's a Nobel laureate, about the book Paradise and what it's about, okay, and when it was written. And this really is the best introduction, okay? The fact that he lives in the United Kingdom is not as important as telling you that what the book is about and the fact that he's a Nobel laureate. So C is the most appropriate answer. Paradise is a historical novel about events that occurred in colonial East Africa, Abdul Gurna's homeland, but it doesn't even say that he's the author. So this one is incomplete. So C is the best introduction to both the author and to the novel. Okay. 31. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. Ulaanbaatar is the capital of Mongolia. The city's population is 907,802. Ulaanbaatar contains 31.98% of Mongolia's population. So it's about a third. Hanoi is the capital of Vietnam. The city's population is 7,781,631. Hanoi contains 8.14% of Vietnam's population. So which choice most effectively uses information from the given sentences to emphasize the relative sizes of the two capitals' populations? So you got to understand this. Even though there's more people in Hanoi, it's a smaller percentage of the total population in Vietnam. There's less than 1 million people here, but it's a third of the population of Mongolia. So you're looking for relative size here. But let's see which choices they offer us. Mongolia's capital is Ulaanbaatar, which has 907,802 people, and Vietnam's capital is Hanoi, which has 7 million people. This does not get to the issue, which is the percent of people of the total population in the country that live in the capital. So the A is wrong. Populations of the capitals Mongolia and Vietnam are 907, 802 Ulaanbaatar, and 7 million Hanoi, respectively. Again, doesn't get to the ratio of city to country population. Even though Hanoi population 7,781,000 is larger than Ulaanbaatar, population 907,802, Ulaanbaatar accounts for more of its country's population. Yes, this is where the ratios are explained, right? So this is a good answer. D, comparing Vietnam and Mongolia, 7,781,000 is 8% of Vietnam's population, and 907,31 is 31% of Mongolia's. Well, that may be true, but it doesn't explain the relative ratios. The relative ratios are emphasized by the fact that Ulaanbaatar has more of its country's population than Hanoi. So the best answer is C, okay? Because that you're bringing home the concept. You really want to look at the concept that you're communicating. Okay, 32. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. One of history's greatest libraries was the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, Iraq. It was founded in the 8th century with the goal of preserving all the world's knowledge. Scholars at the House of Wisdom collected ancient and contemporary texts from Greece, India, and elsewhere and translated them into Arabic. Writings included those of the Greek philosopher Aristotle and the Indian mathematician Aryabhata. The House of Wisdom used Chinese papermaking technology to create paper versions to be studied and shared. The student wants to explain how the House of Wisdom preserved the world's knowledge. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal? So we want to see which one of these choices gives you the best idea about the House of Wisdom. Okay, A, the House of Wisdom was known for bringing together knowledge from around the world, including from Greece, India, and China. Well, there it doesn't really mention anything about the types of paper that were used and the fact that they were studying and sharing it. B, founded in Iraq in the 8th century, the House of Wisdom employed many scholars as translators. Doesn't explain that it was taking stuff from all over the world, trying to bring it together. So B is inadequate, okay? C, writings from the Greek philosopher Aristotle and the Indian mathematician Aryabhata were preserved in the House of Wisdom. Well, those are specific facts, but doesn't really explain the idea that they were bringing all the world's knowledge from different countries together, putting it in paper form and then sharing it. D, the House of Wisdom collected writings from different countries and created paper versions in Arabic to be studied and shared. There it is. So it's getting all these writings from different places and it's creating paper versions, translating them to Arabic and then sharing the paper. So D is the best answer to describe the House of Wisdom. Okay, next one. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. British musicians John Lennon and Paul McCartney shared writing credit for numerous Beatles songs. Many Lennon-McCartney songs were actually written by either Lennon or McCartney, not by both. The exact authorship of specific parts of many Beatles songs, such as the verse for In My Life, is disputed. Mark Glickman, Jason Brown, and Ryan Song used statistical methods to analyze the musical content of Beatles songs. They concluded that there is an 18.9% probability that McCartney wrote the verse for In My Life, stating that the verse is, quote, consistent with Lennon's songwriting style, close quote. So basically, this is textual analysis. You're looking at how how the author forms sentences, what vocabulary they use, what imagery they use, their grammar. So all of that stuff goes into some kind of a probability algorithm that says that it was more than 80% probable that Lennon wrote the lyrics to In My Life. Okay, so the student wants to make a generalization about the kind of study conducted by Glickman, Brown, and Song. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this? Okay, let's look and see. Based on statistical analysis, Glickman, Brown, and Song claim that John Lennon wrote the verse of In My Life. Well, that's true. That's a reasonable answer, right? Based on statistical analysis, but does it really address all of the concepts that we discussed earlier? Okay, let's see. B, there's only an 18.9% probability that Paul McCartney wrote the verse for In My Life. John Lennon is the more likely author. Well, that's true, but it doesn't talk about how they did it, right? Generalizations about the kind of study conducted by Glickman. Generalizations about the kind of study. This doesn't address that at all, okay? It is likely that John Lennon, not Paul McCartney, wrote the verse for In My Life. That doesn't explain anything. Doesn't even give you the statistics, right? Researchers have used statistical methods to address questions of authorship within the field of music. So the choice here is B, between A and D. Which one is more of a generalization of a technique? Which one is more specific? Which one is more of a generalization? Remember, make a generalization about the kind of study. This is more of a generalization. Researchers have used statistical methods to address questions of authorship within the field of music. That's a very general statement, and it encompasses what Glickman, Brown, and Song did with the Beatles. So when you see that generalization about the kind of study, you're looking for a generalized statement. This is much more general than that. So the right answer is D, has to be D. Okay, good. Now we're not going to stop. We're going to move on. The Mule Bone, a 1930 play written by Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes, is perhaps the best known of the few examples of blank in literature. Most writers prefer working alone. And given that working together cost Hurston and Hughes their friendship, it is not hard to see why. So they wrote a play together, and then apparently they fought so much that they stopped being friends after that. It's an example of what when you work together: a characterization, an interpretation, a collaboration, or commercialization. Which one of these words is a definition of working together? Anybody?
Collaboration.
So it's one of the few examples of collaboration in literature, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for them. They actually stopped being friends because they must have had terrible arguments about the text. Okay, so C is right. 2, the process of mechanically recycling plastics is often considered blank because of the environmental impact and the loss of material quality that often occurs. But chemist Takunda Chazavachi has helped develop a cleaner process of chemical recycling that converts superabsorbent polymers from diapers into a desirable reusable adhesive. Interesting. Which choice completes the text with the most logical, precise word? So the process of mechanically recycling plastics is often considered, it's got to be negative, right? Because the environmental impact is bad and the loss of quality in the material. So you got to think of something here that's not good. Satisfactory is pretty positive. Dynamic is positive. Resilient is positive. But inadequate is pretty negative. So B is a good answer. It's considered inadequate because of environmental impact and loss of structure. One of the things you should know is that recycled plastic is not as strong as the plastic that is manufactured directly. So people always talk about made from recycled plastic. Well, that's great if it's a water bottle or a soda bottle. But if you're putting shingles on a roof, you definitely don't want recycled plastic. It's not structurally as strong as virgin plastic. It's manufactured directly from raw material. Okay, 3, interruptions in the supply chain for microchips used in personal electronics have challenged an economist's assertion that retailers can expect robust growth in sales of those devices in the coming months. The delays are unlikely to blank her projection entirely, but will almost certainly extend its time frame. So she's saying there's going to be this great sale of personal electronic devices, but there are no chips to make them. If there are no chips to make them, you can't make them, you can't sell them. So the delays are unlikely to blank her projection entirely, right? So we got to think that they're going to definitely make her projections less, or maybe delay them, but they're not going to wipe them out entirely. So we want to see which word here would be most closely associated with the idea of wiping them out or making them not relevant. Dispute, withdraw, underscore, or invalidate. Which one do you think is the best word here?
D.
You are correct. Invalidate is absolutely right. So the delays are unlikely to invalidate her projection entirely, but will most certainly extend its time frame. Okay, this is the strongest word here. Okay, and it means the right thing is that her projections are not valid because of the chip shortage. Okay, number 4. In her 2021 art installation, Anthem, Wu Tsang joined forces with singer and composer Beverly Glenn Copeland to produce a piece that critics found truly blank. We don't know if it was good or bad, right? Truly something. They praised Tsang for creatively transforming a museum rotunda into a dynamic exhibit by projecting filmed images of Glenn Copeland onto a massive 84-foot curtain and filling the space with the sounds of his and other voices singing. Sounds like a pretty wild exhibition, right? Giant rotunda, big circular area with these heavy curtains going way, way up, and these massive projections and all this music sound coming in. Okay, so they found it truly restrained, definitely not restrained, right? It's pretty much over the top. Inventive, yeah, it could be inventive. Inexplicable, no, because what you see is what you get. Mystifying, no. So what do you think is the right answer here?
B. Inventive.
Inventive, yeah, because they praised it. And you praise things that are inventive. You don't praise things that are inexplicable or mystifying or restrained. You praise things that are inventive. So inventive is definitely the right answer, B. Good job. Okay, 5. Some scientists have suggested that mammals in the Mesozoic era were not a very blank group, but paleontologist Zhe Luo's research suggests that early mammals living in the shadow of dinosaurs weren't all ground-dwelling insectivores. Fossils of various plant-eating mammals have been found in China, including species like Villaveladon diplomilos, which Luo says could glide like a flying squirrel. So basically, the idea here is that the diversity among these small mammals was such they didn't all eat insects. They were much more diverse. Many of them ate plants too. So scientists suggest that mammals were not very diverse, but Luo's research suggests that they weren't all eating insects. Instead, a lot of them were eating plants, and some of them could even fly. So what do you think is the right answer here?
C.
Diverse, right. Were they diverse? Well, Luo says they were. Okay, good. 6. The following text is adapted from Gwendolyn Bennett's 1926 poem, Street Lamps in Early Spring. Night wears a garment, all velvet soft, all violet blue, and over her face she draws a veil, as shimmering fine as floating dew, and here and there in the black of her hair, the subtle hands of night move slowly with their gem-starred light. Okay, so the whole poem is about night. Which choice best describes the overall structure of the text? presents alternating descriptions of night in a rural area and in a city. I don't see anything about rural versus city. So my answer, my assessment of that choice is that it's wrong. Okay, because there's nothing in there about city versus country. B, it sketches an image of nightfall and then an image of sunrise. There's nothing in there about sunrise, all about night. C, it makes an extended comparison of night to a human being. Let's take a look at that. Night wears a garment, just like a human being, all velvet soft, all violet blue. And over her face, just like a human being, night has a face, she draws a veil, as shimmering fine as floating dew. And here and there in the black of her hair, just like a human, there's hair. The subtle hands of night, just like a human has hands, move slowly with their gem-starred light. So C makes an extended comparison of night to a human being is a good answer. D, it portrays how night changes from one season of the year to the next. There's nothing in there about seasons. So C is the only right answer. It's quite a beautiful poem. Okay, 7. According to historian Vicky Ruiz, Mexican-American women made crucial contributions to the labor movement during World War II. At the time, food processing companies entered into contracts to supply United States Armed Forces with canned goods. Increased production quotas conferred greater bargaining power on the company's employees, many of whom were Mexican-American women. Employees insisted on more favorable benefits, and employers who were anxious to fulfill the contracts complied. So basically, the demand for canned goods went way up because of the military. So these owners of these factories knew that they could make a ton of money, but they had to get the workers to work. So that means the workers had more power. They could basically screw up the owners and prevent them from producing all that the army was demanding. So the owners basically had to give something to the workers. Thus, labor activism became a platform for Mexican-American women to assert their agency. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion in the text as a whole? Employees insisted on more favorable benefits, and employers who were anxious to fulfill the contracts complied. So you're saying that the employees had a little more leverage, right? And the employers said, okay, we'll agree to that. It elaborates on a claim about labor relations in a particular industry made earlier in the text. Okay. According to historian Vicky Ruiz, Mexican-American women made crucial contributions to the labor movement during World War II. That's the assertion in the beginning. Okay. Employees insisted on more favorable benefits, and employers were anxious to fill the contracts complied. So this kind of is a restatement, right, of what these Mexican-American women were able to do during this time when there was a huge demand for canned goods. So A is actually a pretty good answer, elaborating on the first part of the passage. B, it offers an example of a trend in the World War II era economy. No, it's not talking about the economy at large. It's talking specifically about the labor movement and the canned goods area of the labor movement. It notes a possible exception to the historical narrative of labor activism. No, it's giving you an example of labor activism, not an exception. It provides further details about the identities of the workers discussed earlier in the text. This does not do anything to clarify identity. We know they were Mexican-American women. Right? What it does do is it elaborates on the idea that there were contributions made to the labor movement by Mexican-American women. So the right answer is A. Okay? And I think we're going to stop because I wanted to go to the vocabulary. Let me see if I have the vocabulary list. Yeah, I do. Okay, good. So let me stop share here. And let me find the vocabulary list, which we all love, and pop that up here. I just got to get rid of all these pop-ups, which always annoy me. It's Microsoft advertising. They don't want to leave us alone. Okay, these are your words now. Some of these are beautiful words that you definitely want to know. And one of them we talked about earlier, synesthesia. So tell me, what's your definition of synesthesia is? Anybody?
When you experience a sense through another.
Yes, it's exactly right. Now, I saw a video recently of a little boy who has perfect pitch. He's 5. He was eating cereal at breakfast table, and his mother says to him, "So, what happens to you when you hear a note?" He goes, "Every note has a color." And she said, "Well, what's C?" He goes, "C is blue." "What about B flat?" "It's orange." And she says, "Well, what about A?" And he goes, "A is green." And she says, "Do you see green?" He goes, "No, I hear it. I hear green." That's the miracle of synesthesia. It's a very strange thing. Now, guess what? There are certain hallucinogen drugs like ayahuasca and peyote and hallucinogenic mushrooms and LSD, lysergic acid, none of which I'm recommending to you, by the way. But when you take those drugs, a lot of times you experience synesthesia. So you'll start seeing sounds in the air, and you'll start hearing visions. It's a very strange thing. It's almost like your brain is being rewired by these drugs. But some people naturally have synesthesia. Okay. Corrugation. What is corrugation? Anyone?
A fold.
Yeah, it's a form of alternating ridges and grooves. Like if you look at a screw, right? Not a nail, nail is smooth. But look at a screw, run your fingers along the screw, it's corrugated. Or like we said, a flexible straw. The top of the straw, if you run your fingers along it, you feel the corrugation. Okay, that's what corrugation is. Apt. What does the word apt mean?
Smart or intelligent.
Yeah, well fitted, well qualified. There's also another definition of apt. If you startle him, he's apt to pass out. Means that he's disposed to it. He has a tendency toward it. So you can say that's an apt description of him, meaning it's a good description, a fitting description. Or you can say he is apt to faint when you startle him. He's prone to faint. He has a tendency toward it. So understand that apt has two meanings. Okay, arachnid. What's an arachnid?
A wingless carnivorous arthropod.
Yeah, exactly right. It has two segments. And guess what? The front segment has all the legs. The front segment has the 4 pairs of legs. So an arachnid always has 8 legs. And examples of arachnids? Can anyone give me an example?
A spider.
A spider is right. And also scorpions, which are poisonous, and ticks, the things that can get in on your skin and suck the blood out of you and give you diseases, like deer ticks. Ixodes damani is the deer tick. And the deer tick, if it gets on your body and you don't pull it off quickly, it will transmit a disease to you called Lyme disease. And I'm sure you've all heard of Lyme disease. But ticks can transmit other diseases too, like Rocky Mountain spotted fever, St. Louis encephalitis. Ticks can transmit a lot of diseases. So definitely when you're out in the woods or if you're in a field, you have got to, when you get home, undress completely and look at your entire body and make sure that there's no ticks on your body. If you pull them off quickly, they will not transmit disease. If you leave them on for a few hours, they can burrow into your skin and it's their saliva that carries the diseases. So always do a tick check when you're out and about, especially in the spring through the fall. If it's the winter time and it's cold out, usually the ticks are not active. But if, like right now in the spring, if you go running through a field, what the ticks do is they sense your movement, they jump on you. And a lot of times they'll crawl up your body without you even knowing it, and they get behind your ear or like in your hairline where you can't see them, or sometimes the back of your knee. And so you want to be very careful about ticks, especially when the weather is warm. Okay, good. Okay, conspicuously. What about conspicuously? What's something? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Very blatant and obvious.
Yeah, attracts a lot of attention. Like the man hanging from the 10th story window was very conspicuous. Everybody was looking at him. Yeah, something that's very noticeable. Or when the giant cruise ship came into the harbor, it was very conspicuous. Good. Volition. What is volition?
Your choice by will.
Very important. So we always refer in medicine to volitional movement or non-volitional movement. Volitional movement means you mean to do it. You want to move. It's intentional. Non-volitional movement means you're shaking or you're jerking, and you're not intending to do it. You just can't stop it. So it's very important, the difference between volition, desiring to do something, and non-volitional movement. And people always, in common parlance, they always say he did it of his own volition, meaning he meant to do it. He wanted to do it. He wasn't forced. He did it of his own volition. So there's a medical term for volition, a medical use, and a non-medical use. Good. Rotunda. Think of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., the big dome. That's a rotunda. What's the definition of a rotunda?
A round building with a dome.
Yeah, that's it. It's a big round area covered by a dome. And if you guys have ever been to DC, you have to go into the Capitol Rotunda because it's really impressive. I mean, it's just huge, and it's got all these beautiful paintings and marble, and it's certainly worth a trip if you go to DC to go to the Capitol Rotunda. Okay, antediluvian. What is antediluvian?
Out of date.
Yeah, antediluvian, surviving from the distant past, old-fashioned. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that word, but antediluvian, when something is antediluvian means it's very passe, like women wearing hoop skirts or men with handlebar mustaches. That's pretty antediluvian. Apathetic, what does it mean if you're apathetic?
You don't care.
Yeah, you just don't care. You're not engaged. You're not interested. You don't have any strong feelings. You're apathetic. Having or showing a lack of interest or concern. Apocryphal. Apocryphal is a great word. If you can learn how to use the word apocryphal, I think it's a fantastic word. It gets people's attention. They don't know what you're talking about, but it makes you sound really smart too. So what is something that's apocryphal?
It's a fake.
Yeah, it's inauthentic, fictitious, dubious. It's not real. So you can say the story of George Washington cutting down the cherry tree was apocryphal. In other words, it never really happened, but it's a great story. So when you talk about something that's apocryphal, it's like a big fake. Something that people believe that's not really true. Okay? Now, the words we're going to use tonight, the ones we're going to dig into is antediluvian and synesthesia. Now, synesthesia and antediluvian, let's talk. Antediluvian is Latin, okay? And believe it or not, ante is from the Latin, which means before, like an anteroom, right? And diluvian is a flood or an inundation. So that's also Latin. So before the flood. Now, when was the flood in the Bible? The big flood. What book of the Bible?
Exodus.
Like the first one?
It's Genesis.
Oh, wow.
Genesis. So somebody, who's talking? Please stop talking. So anyway, antediluvian means before the flood. It means before Noah's Ark. It's before something that happened in the first book of the Old Testament. So it's pretty damn old, right? But the term antediluvian to mean old-fashioned was first coined. This word was first formed in 1726, only 300 years ago, by an English physician. He was being funny. And he was basically saying that person is antediluvian. He lived before Noah's flood. So the roots of this word are very old. They come from Latin, before the flood. But the coining of this actual word was only 300 years ago by an English doctor who thought it was funny. And he referred to someone as being antediluvian, coming from before Noah's flood. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Now, diluvian is from the root diluvium in Latin. What other words do you think can come from this root, diluvium? Can you think of other words in English? Okay, there's a couple. Dilute. When you dilute something, you put water into it, right? You flood it. That comes from the same root. The other one is deluge. Deluge is a big flood. Comes directly from the Latin diluvium. Okay, so these are words that are in modern English that come from the Latin root. And of course, ante, we know, antecedent, antechamber, right? There's a lot of words that use this prefix meaning before. Even in poker, you say, what's your ante? Put your money up before you bet. Okay, so that's antediluvian. Now we're going to go over to the Greek world. This is purely a Greek word. Sin, okay, is Greek meaning together. It's coming together. And aesthesia is from the Greek aesthesis, which means feeling. Okay, so the coming together of feelings or senses, sensations, is synesthesia. Okay, and we've already described what that is, right? But I want you to name some other words that use this root aesthesia, which means sensation or feeling. Can you name some modern words that use this root aesthesia? If you go have surgery, what do you get before they cut you? What do they give you?
Anesthesia.
Anesthesia. So an means taking away, removing your sensation, removing your feeling so you don't feel the pain. They give you anesthesia. It comes directly from the Greek root aesthesis. The other word is paresthesia. Does anyone know what a paresthesia is? It's a medical term. Remember this, guys. There's a lot of Latin in the English language, but when it comes to medical terms, it's almost all Greek. I just want to let you know that. So when you go to medical school and you're studying medical vocabulary, you're going to be learning Greek roots and Greek prefixes much, much more than Latin. So here's paresthesias are weird feelings that you have in your hands or feet or face, tingling feelings. Para means alongside, right? Paragon, para, or an example of. So paresthesia is like a strange sensation, like when your hand falls asleep or your foot falls asleep and it's tingling before you get the blood back into it. That's a paresthesia. And again, it uses that root aesthesis. Now another one is hyperesthesia. Can anyone tell me what hyperesthesia means? Hyper. Hyperesthesia. What is remember, hypo is less, hyper is more. Right? So what do you think hyperesthesia means? Okay, so hyperesthesia is a very interesting thing. It means that you feel things more than you should. So for example, there are certain neurologic conditions where if somebody just touches you, you have horrible pain. You can't stand sheets on your legs. If someone brushes past you, you get shooting pain. This is hyperesthesia, too much feeling, too much sensation. So you have anesthesia, taking away sensation, paresthesia, strange sensations that are not normal, and hyperesthesia, feeling too much, which makes you very uncomfortable or creating discomfort or pain. Okay? So these are all really, really good terms. So antediluvians from the Latin, before the flood, synesthesias from the Greek, the together sensations. And that's it. You guys have questions for me?
No.
All right, I want you to use the word apocryphal in a sentence 5 times this week. Okay? I want you to start getting that word apocryphal into your vocabulary because it's a great word. And by the way, A lot of times when you guys learn these words, if you're reading or you're looking at a newspaper article or something online, you're going to see the word. You go, oh my God, I just studied that word. Because a lot of times when you become aware of a word, you start becoming, you're cognizant of the fact that you have it. A lot of times, if you don't know what the word is, you just kind of read over it. You don't really take notice. Okay, guys, well, have a great week, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.